ran after Khamenei. Is Prince Reza Pahlavi the last resort? Khamenei is dead, and with him the entire system is shaking. State television interrupted its programs. Funeral chants flooded the airwaves. Within minutes, the news spread like wildfire through the streets of Tehran. The Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, the man who held Iran in an iron fist since 1989, has taken his last breath. 85 million Iranians have just been plunged into the unknown, and with them, the entire Middle East holds its breath. But make no mistake, this is not simply the death of a head of state. This is the collapse of the central pillar of a theocratic system built on fear, on blood, and on the conviction that nothing and no one could ever shake it. Khamenei was not just a religious leader, he was the supreme arbiter, the invisible cement holding together rival factions ready to tear each other apart. With him disappears the last stabilizing force of a regime running on empty, and in this colossal void, a figure emerges from exile with a force nobody truly anticipated. Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, the heir to a throne overthrown 47 years ago. The day after the announcement, the Revolutionary Guards, the Pasdarans, attempt to lock down the capital. Internet is cut intermittently. Armored vehicles patrol the entrances of universities. But something has fundamentally changed. The fear, that ancestral fear the regime so carefully cultivated for decades, is beginning to crack. People pour into the streets, first by the dozens, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Not professional protesters, mothers, engineers, teachers, teenagers, born under the Islamic Republic who have never known anything else. These people do not want a bloody revolution. They want a way out. They are looking for a door. And this is precisely where the question of succession becomes explosive. Who can take the place of the supreme leader? Inside the system, one name immediately circulates: Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the deceased. A man of the shadows, little known to the general public, but deeply embedded in intelligence networks and Revolutionary Guard circles. But the regime itself knows this option is suicidal. Imposing a hereditary succession in an Islamic republic, it's a contradiction so glaring it risks inflaming the system's last moderate supporters. It would be openly admitting that the theocracy was, from the very beginning, nothing more than a monarchy disguised as a religious revolution. It is into this historical fault line, this gaping contradiction at the heart of power, that Reza Pahlavi decides to strike. And he strikes hard, and he strikes fast. Within hours of the death announcement, the prince releases an emergency address from Washington. Not a speech of triumph, not a speech of revenge, a speech of national reconciliation. He delivers these words with a disarming calm. This is not the hour for vengeance. This is the hour for rebuilding. I am not returning to be a king. I am returning to be a bridge. This distinction is crucial. Pahlavi has understood something that many Iranian opposition figures in exile have never grasped. The Iranian people do not want a new master, even a benevolent one. They want a transition. They want a structure. They want the guarantee that tomorrow will not be worse than today. So the prince presents a concrete plan, a provisional government composed of technocrats, experts from the Iranian diaspora, and members of the internal opposition who risked their lives inside Tehran itself. A roadmap toward free elections, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to prevent bloody purges. And above all, and this is where his strategy becomes brilliant, he speaks directly to the civil servants, the soldiers of the regular army, the judges, all those who serve the regime not out of ideological conviction, but out of economic necessity or fear. He reaches out his hand. He offers them amnesty. He tells them, "You have a place in tomorrow's Iran if you choose the people today." It is a strategy of honorable exit, and it may be the only strategy capable of preventing a bloodbath. But Iran is not playing out this drama in a vacuum. What makes this crisis absolutely terrifying is the geopolitical context in which it explodes. Khamenei's death does not occur during a period of relative peace. It erupts at the precise moment when the entire region is sitting on a powder keg. Israel is watching, and when Israel watches a power vacuum in Tehran, with centrifuges still spinning at Natanz and Isfahan, it does not stand idle. For the Israeli government and for Mossad, Iran's internal chaos represents a unique strategic window, an opportunity that may never come again, to permanently neutralize Iran's nuclear capabilities while its command structures are disorganized, while nobody yet knows who has their finger on the button. This temptation is real, it is documented, and it turns every hour of political transition in Tehran into a race against the clock. On the other side of the chessboard, Washington is on high alert. The American administration knows perfectly well that if Iran collapses without a structured transition, the consequences would be catastrophic. A global energy crisis, with the Strait of Hormuz potentially blocked. A massive migration wave toward Europe and Turkey. An immediate proliferation of weapons and militias across the entire region. And above all, the risk that the Pasdarans, cornered, decide to transfer ballistic or even nuclear technologies to non-state actors out of sheer vengeance. In this context, Reza Pahlavi is Washington's ideal interlocutor. He speaks their language, literally and figuratively. He knows Western codes. He commits to cutting the funding of Hezbollah and Hamas. He promises normalization with Israel. He opens the door to an Iran integrated into the global economic order. But here lies the trap. American support must remain absolutely invisible, because if Reza Pahlavi is perceived as the CIA's candidate, as the pawn Washington pulled out of a drawer to serve its oil interests, he instantly loses all credibility among Iranian nationalists, and there are millions of them. These Iranians can despise the Islamic Republic with every fiber of their being, while categorically refusing to have a leader imposed on them by a foreign power. This is the fundamental contradiction that has poisoned every Iranian opposition movement for decades. Every statement Pahlavi makes, every interview he gives, is weighed and reviewed in Tel Aviv and the White House before it is ever made public. It is a balancing act that takes your breath away. But the real obstacle, the most formidable, the most unpredictable, is not found in Western chancelleries. It is found inside Iran, in the barracks, in underground command centers, in the air-conditioned offices where Pasdaran generals watch the situation unfold with cold determination. The Revolutionary Guards are not an ordinary army. They are simultaneously an elite military force, a colossal economic empire, and a state within a state. They control vast swaths of the Iranian economy, from construction companies to oil terminals. They have direct financial interests in hundreds of corporations. For these men, Pahlavi's victory does not simply mean the loss of political power. It means the end of their personal fortunes, potentially criminal prosecution, potentially prison. For the most deeply compromised among them, execution. These men have nothing to gain from a peaceful transition, and men with nothing to gain are men capable of anything. The scenario haunting the prince and his advisors is this. The Pasdarans, faced with the collapse of the theocratic regime, decide to bypass everyone, including the mullahs, to establish an ultranationalist military junta, a regime without God, without religious ideology, but with all the missiles, all the prisons, and all the brutality of the previous one. This scenario is not fiction. It is precisely what happened in Egypt after the Arab Spring. And it is what threatens Iran at every single second of this crisis. To counter this threat, Reza Pahlavi does something extraordinarily risky. He multiplies secret contacts with the generals of the Artesh, the Iranian Regular Army, an army distinct from the Pasdarans, historically sidelined and humiliated by the Revolutionary Guard since 1979. He sends them a simple but loaded message. Your hour has come. Protect the people. Choose history over complicity. He seeks to create a fracture within the security apparatus itself, between those who have everything to lose in a transition and those who have everything to gain by being on the right side of history. The question that will determine the fate of 85 million Iranians is ultimately one of brutal simplicity. When the order comes to fire on the crowd, and that order will come, will the soldiers obey, or will they lay down their arms? If the transition succeeds, if Pahlavi manages to establish himself as the catalyst for a post-Islamist Iran, stable, open, reconciled with its own people and with its neighbors, then the entire map of the Middle East gets redrawn. Hezbollah loses its funding. The axis of resistance collapses. An Iranian diaspora of several million people, among the most educated and talented in the world, can finally come home and rebuild. But if the transition fails, if the Pasdarans pull off their coup, if civil war ignites, if Israel strikes the nuclear sites in the chaos, then we enter a period of global turbulence that nobody can predict the end of. Prince Reza Pahlavi has spent 47 years in exile waiting for this moment. The question is no longer whether he wants to return. The question is whether Iran, wounded, exhausted, but proud, is ready to trust him, and whether the world is ready to give him the chance to try. History is being written right now, in the streets of Tehran, in the dark corridors of ministries, and in the hearts of millions of Iranians who simply dream of freedom. If this analysis kept you locked in, hit that like button. It's the only way to push this kind of work past the algorithm. Subscribe so you don't miss a single development, because in the coming weeks, every move in Iran will reshape our world. And tell me in the comments, do you think Reza Pahlavi is the right man for this moment, or just another mirage in a region that has seen far too many?